It's the inaugural record release from Discograffiti. Metal Machine Muzak is a slanted tribute to Lou Reed's divisive 1975 double LP Metal Machine Music. Lester Bangs called it the greatest album ever made, but no matter how it hits you, it's always been the ultimate music freak's secret handshake. My ambient reimagining features 4 16-minute, 1-second tracks, just like the original, and each one was created by a top-shelf indie rock visionary. Lou Barlow from Dinosaur Jr. and Sebado, Corey Hansen from Wand, W. Cullen Hart from the Olivia Tremor Control, and Mark Robinson from Unrest. That's right, not a slouch in the bunch, unlike 99% of the compilations you've ever begrudgingly purchased for the one and only band on it you just had to hear. Metal Machine Muzak will not be available on streaming. The digital version is finally available for purchase, and the vinyl will be shipped this summer. Pre-orders for the LPs are available now, but they're going fast. They're being produced in a very limited edition run of 300 numbered 180-gram metallic silver double LP gatefold copies, only 100 of which can be ordered online. These copies will be numbered from 1 to 100, and they're first come, first served. To order either the digital or the vinyl, just head over to patreon.com/discograffiti/shop. Again, that's patreon.com/discograffiti/shop. Don't miss out on Metal Machine Muzak, the ambient experience designed to make Brian Eno run screaming.
I don't have any hard feelings against Hitomi about that at all, just for the record. I don't think I've ever talked about this, but when I left the band, we had kind of worked things out, but there was a time when I was like seemingly being kicked out of the band during the making of Runners Forum.
Welcome to Discograffiti, the music obsessives podcast that gives freaks like you and me the chance to connect with a brotherhood obsessed with rating the entire discography of every single artist and band that ever mattered. I'm your host, Dave Gebroe, and with 3 to 4 episodes each week, you're going to gain a comprehensive knowledge of an act's history and output in the time it takes to listen to one album. Each new guest swings a hard left into an area you either had no idea you needed to know about or know all about and can't believe you're not alone out there. I support a wife and a 5-year-old son with Discograffiti as my sole source of income, so if you love the show and this episode, please Venmo me a tip at David-Gebroe. That's Gebroe. My guess is you probably stuff $1 into a tip jar when you buy a muffin. Please then, gauge the worth of this podcast side by side with simply being handed a muffin. It'll be completely crucial to this show to receive even $1 from you right now. My family and I thank you. And in this episode, we'll be turning our spray cans on Chris Cohen, along with our special guest, Chris Cohen himself. In part 1 of this special doubleheader, here's just some of the many things we touch on in this podcast. How Chris wound up joining Deerhoof and became a crucial architect of their sound during the Apple O Milkman era. A rundown of the tumultuous interpersonal drama that went down during his time in the band, and in-depth discussions of Chris's first 2 solo albums, Overgrown Path and As If Apart. If you're a Chris Cohen superfan like me, you'll want to turn this free version off right now and opt for the ultimate major cut of this episode on our Patreon page, which features 27 additional minutes of essential material, including overviews of entire releases. It's literally twice the length of the publicly available version. And you can find it in our Patreon shop for mere pennies at patreon.com/discograffiti/shop. Or just subscribe for access to the complete versions of all our shows. Longer cuts are on the Lieutenant tier, and our longest ultimate cuts, they're on the Major tier. Even if you're on the fence, just head over there because it's finally free to become a basic member. Coming up, we've got Tom Morello rating the MC5, a career-spanning interview with the Beatles' Pete Best, Robert Schneider rating the Strawberry Alarm Clock, and a massive, many-guested launch into the Beach Boys' entire catalog. So don't miss out. Open up your listening app right now and subscribe. And away we go then! Today's guest is a singer-songwriter, producer, and multi-instrumentalist, best known for his solo albums and a golden stint with Deerhoof from 2002 to 2006, which stands as my personal favorite era of that great band. Before just going by his own name, he wrote music for Natural Dreamers, Crypticize, and his band The Curtains. He's released 3 solo records on Captured Tracks. 2012's Overgrown Path was called a perfectly conceived album by AllMusic, and 2016's As If Apart was described as a powerful, exquisitely realized journey by Pitchfork. Since then, we've been treated to his self-titled 2019 LP and the new Hardly Art release Paint a Room. It was Captured Tracks owner Mike Sniper who tweeted that whenever I get depressed about running an indie rock label, I can take solace in knowing I put out 2 Chris Cohen LPs. He's toured extensively alongside artists like Eleanor Friedberger, Tortoise, Mac DeMarco, and Parquet Courts, allowing precious, albeit infrequent, glimpses of his patented, diffuse, inviting sound world. Lads and ladies of Discograffiti'ville, won't you take a long, measured, contemplative, deep, deep breath for the decidedly un-Jewish sonic auteur with the Jewishest possible name, the somnambulist crooner, conjurer of Tascam twilight. Why not snuggle up with that thick blanket under which he so graciously tucked you in? Rockabye babies, it's Chris Cohen.
Thank you.
Hey, man. So let me tell you how I stumbled upon you.
Okay.
My wife, who's got a good taste in music, she said, you got to check out this song. This is around 2016. She found the song Yesterday's on My Mind, which is on As If Apart, your second record. And she said, you got to hear this song. And it was just one of those discoveries where I could not stop listening to it. It was, and still is to me, a perfect song. Perfectly constructed, every single piece of it, the way it's recorded, there's a vibe to it that's totally singular. And the day that I discovered it, I couldn't get enough of it. You know, a song like that and an oeuvre like yours is why I am such a psycho about music in the first place.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I'm like that too. I like to, if I get into somebody, I'm all the way in. Usually, like I need to hear everything, and I get into the whole like following the chronology, and it's fun.
This show really justifies an OCD way of listening to music, so I don't appear crazy on the outside. But I listened to music for many years like it's all laid out on this show. Let's first dive into the section of the show I affectionately call the run-up, which gets us in as economical a fashion to your first recorded note. You were born in Los Angeles in 1975. Your mom's a former Broadway actress, Lynn Cohen, and your dad is a former music business executive named Kip Cohen. In fact, he signed Billy Joel. Is that correct?
Actually, yeah, that sounds right. I don't know. That's probably true. I actually don't know.
Apropos of nothing at all, there's nobody I hate musically more than Billy Joel.
Yeah. I feel you.
I apologize to Kip for going there, but he may
hate Billy Joel too. You don't really know. Nobody knows.
It's true. And,
he didn't really like pop music, or he didn't really listen to like popular rock music.
Business wise, it was an incredible decision. So, no slight on your dad for having done that.
He missed out on some really good ones.
What's the biggest one he missed out on?
Well, the biggest one to me is he was thinking about signing Devo to A&M. He flew them out. They were looking for a new wave band to sign at A&M apparently. And they were like, this is going to be the band. They brought them out to LA. My dad, he gave them a show at the Starwood, like a showcase. And then he didn't think they were like good enough. He didn't think they were poppy enough or something. Too weird. And he just dropped them. So my first favorite band in the world was Devo, really. Like as a little kid, when Whip It came out, I was obsessed with Devo. And when he told me, oh yeah, I was going to sign them, it like became this obsession to me. Like, why didn't my dad sign Devo? And I got to meet Mark Mothersbaugh once. I talked to him and he was like, oh my God. He totally remembered my dad. And he was like telling me how destroyed they were by my dad's decision to drop them. And he was just telling me the whole story of how they like, eventually they stayed in LA. Iggy Pop let them stay at his house. And then they started to just meet people. And then that was how they eventually ended up getting signed to Warner. But it was like really heartbreaking. Like he told me how they got in this really big fight right after the show and they were just crushed. I remember my dad actually took me to see them play. That was my first concert, the Oh No, It's Devo tour.
Wow.
My dad took me to see them at Universal Amphitheater.
One thing that struck me about your childhood is that at 6 years old, your parents taught you how to meditate, how to do TM.
That's true. My parents studied to be TM teachers a long time ago. My sister and I both grew up meditating with them. My mom saw the Beatles on TV like in the 60, I guess in 69. And my parents, like in 1970, they like went to India to study with Maharishi, and they came back and like were teaching. My mom was teaching TM at the first TM center in New York City. The family would meditate together.
I'm disproportionately curious about your relationship with music, especially starting out. You never saw music as a career path or as a way to make money. Because of your dad, you figured that only shit music made you money. But yet you had the sense that music was important and was something you could do. So with those sort of combative thought patterns, how do you kind of move forward into a clearer notion of how your life is supposed to go?
Yeah, that's a really good question.
Is your relationship with music a conflicted one because of those warring notions?
I don't think it's conflicted because of those. I never was like, oh, I'm going to become a musician for a job. That never happened. I was really lucky and I just happened to be in the right place at the right time in a lot of ways, like with Deerhoof. So in terms of like when you're saying, are you conflicted? I mean, yes, I'm conflicted because it's worked out well in the sense that I'm doing music and I've had a lot of great opportunities and I feel very grateful and blessed to be where I'm at. But at the same time, the music economy, the way our culture deals with music, it's such that it's that existence is not one that I can feel not conflicted about. It's more of a craft.
At what year of your life were you closest to saying, fuck it, I'm going to go for it?
Oh, never. That never happened.
Never? Okay. So as far as your music career goes, phase one, stepping stones toward All Alone, 1999 to 2011. And we start with a single that you had hit me to, St. Joseph and the Abandoned Food 7-inch.
Yeah.
So this is a band you had. This is a college band, right?
Yeah.
My favorite thing about this is that the covers of the 7-inch were made out of edible nori.
True.
That is really cool.
And it might still be edible.
It keeps...
If anyone wants to try eating it. We had so many of those, I couldn't get rid of them fast enough.
So all of the records in this section, I have decided, just as part of the episode rules here, I'm not going to be rating. I'm only rating your solo work under your name. But everything in this section, and there's quite a lot, you had quite a few stepping stones toward being all alone. I don't know if it was while you were in St. Joseph and the Abandoned Food, but certainly during that time is when the Curtains started, which wound up being a really important stepping stone for you. This was yourself and Trevor Shimizu. So that's in 2000. And the first three records are mostly instrumental and influenced by all kinds of stuff, a real melting pot. And then Flybys, is this how your entry into Deerhoof happened? Is that Greg Saunier did work with the Curtains on Flybys?
Okay, so Fast Talks was me and Trevor and Jamie Peterson played drums. So we were playing shows with Deerhoof. We would open for them sometimes. We just became friends with them. Around that time, me and John from Deerhoof started playing together. We started doing Natural Dreamers stuff, writing those songs. John went away for a couple months to Europe. And I remember thinking to myself, hey, maybe Greg and Satomi have a little more time on their hands. And I asked them to join the Curtains. So there was a period where it was me, Trevor, Jamie, Satomi, and Greg all in the Curtains in between those two records. And then I joined Deerhoof. I think, if I'm remembering correctly, I think I might have joined Deerhoof before Flybys.
So this is all concurrent. All these acts, Natural Dreamers, Curtains, Deerhoof, it's all happening at once. Okay.
Right. I was in those three bands simultaneously.
All the work in that era of Deerhoof is so incredible, so intense, but yet never losing the grasp of the melody of the song. But it felt in the best possible way that each of the members, everyone holding an instrument, was in a mad dash to get to the end of the song before everyone else did.
Really?
Which I love. Yeah.
It was really fun to play with those guys. I mean, they're all so unique. And so when I first heard Greg, I went to his thesis recital at Mills College because I was taking a class there. Deerhoof played. That was the first time I saw them. And I just thought, this drummer is like Keith Moon in terms of like rock music and people of my age range and, from my world, I was like, this is the best drummer ever, to me.
How quickly from when you saw them were you in the band from that point?
Over the course of like maybe a year, I was hounding them as just a total fan, and we just became friends and stuff. I was already playing with John, and they were already playing in the Curtains when they asked me to join Deerhoof. So it was a very organic beginning.
Deerhoof obviously kept going, but this particular era in their life as a band is a very defined era. So it's 2003 to 2006 when you're in the band. So you have Apollo, Milkman, Green Cosmos, the Runners 4, and then I believe it was after you had left, the untitled Deerhoof EP comes out. When you came into the band, did you see it as maybe this is going to be a pit stop, or did you not think ahead? Did you know eventually, you would want to assimilate something from the experience and put it back into what you were doing?
Intuitively, maybe I just knew I had something to learn. It was just something I knew I wanted to be a part of. Yeah, it just was something that I did for fun, and when it started to pay bills, it was like, that was just icing on the cake.
That music is so inspired. Each record is like a distinct sonic universe that you can inhabit. And you had a distinct imprint on the band, enough so that when you left, the cover of that Deerhoof EP, it says, "Best wishes to Chris, who is leaving the band to do the Curtains." I mean, if that doesn't communicate the mark that you left on the band, I mean, that's never happened before, to the best of my knowledge.
Whatever I did after that was a result of being in that band.
Do you have a favorite of those records that you released during that time?
Milkman, I didn't do quite as much work on Milkman as, for instance, Apollo, where we played everything together. Milkman was much more overdubbed. I wasn't super involved in the production of it. As a listener, Milkman may be my favorite of the ones that I'm on. It's so artificial. I think that's probably what I like about it. I mean, I really love Friend Opportunity too, which I'm not on. And I love Reveille, which I'm not on. That's probably my favorite. Reveille is probably my favorite Deerhoof record. That was the time when I was really just the most hardcore fan.
That's directly before Apollo, right?
Yeah, I joined the band while Reveille was being finished.
The Runners 4 is kind of a little bit more of a straightforward rock album.
Yeah, I mean, I think Apollo is too. Those were both similar in the sense that we tracked them live.
What was the creative process like, especially for Runners 4? Does it differ with how you do your own work?
It's interesting. I mean, maybe my new record might have some elements of that because the basic tracks are done live. The Runners 4 process was each of us bringing in ideas, arranging them together, tracking them together. Yeah, everybody was kind of involved in every part of it. We were super in each other's faces about each other's songs. We did it 5 days a week for however many months or however long that was. We were going into this practice space. We recorded in a practice space, so we were there 5 days a week, kind of 9 to 5. I'm sure longer.
So
I don't think I'll ever do that again.
You mean that intensely? Work on it that intensely?
Probably not. It's hard to imagine that being feasible. I mean, it nearly ended the band. At one point, Satomi said, either Chris goes or I go.
Wow.
Just to give you an example of how high drama it was, we were all driving each other absolutely nuts. I don't have any hard feelings against Satomi about that at all. Just for the record, I don't think I've ever talked about this, but when I left the band, we had kind of worked things out, but there was a time when I was like seemingly being kicked out of the band during the making of Runners 4. Satomi and I just got in like a little tiff on tour about, like, she told me to clean up my stuff after a show one time, and I got real reactive about that, and we just didn't talk for like 3 weeks on a tour. We like were
It's a long time.
It's a long time. When we got back from the tour, she was just like, either he goes or I go. I later learned that John and Greg talked her out of it, but during that month, I thought I was kind of like, I think I'm probably being kicked out. Also, during that time, my personal life just completely blew up. I found out all this stuff about my dad and my family. My dad was in recovery. Suddenly, I found out that my dad had a really bad speed problem. I found out my dad was gay.
Wait, that was in 2005?
Yeah.
So the 2019 record was not about something that had just happened. This was like going back 15 years.
It's a long story.
We can wait till we get up to that record.
The story with the Runners 4 time was, we were we were finishing, the record was getting pretty close. We had been touring a lot. This thing happened. Satomi was saying, I can't be in a band with Chris anymore. Satomi goes off to Japan and she comes back. And like during the course of that month, that was when I got all this news about my dad. John and Greg talked her out of it. And then she goes, oh, okay, I'm going to drop it. Let's just drop it. So I'm like, okay. And I stayed in the band and we did a bunch of more touring. We finished the record. And I really wanted to be in the band and see this thing. I wanted to see this record through. I put so much into this record. I really loved it. I wanted to play the songs. I wanted to go on tour and play these songs because thought it was so good. I felt like I had never been a part of a band that was at that level of musicianship. It felt like the band was getting a lot of attention.
They were.
I just felt like this is a once in a lifetime. I don't know if I'm ever going to be in this situation again. There was no way I was going to quit this band unless I was being forced.
Were you nervous about doing it? Because obviously,
fuck. It was horrible. I remember there were these Radiohead shows opening for Radiohead. I remember those being on the table. And when I quit, it was like, what? You don't want to do those Radiohead shows? I don't actually care about Radiohead at all. To me, it was just, I was done.
So you got a piano. You started writing circa 2009, 2010. Now you're writing just for the sake of it, not for an album, right? Or for any other external goal, but just to write.
That's right. I mean, I really thought I was done with music business, and I didn't have a label or booking agent or any of that stuff. It was like starting over, and I was working day jobs.
Not only that, but you move away from California. In 2011, you move to Vermont, which, by the way, I have a house in Vermont. You were in Shaftesbury?
Yeah, near Bennington. I moved to Vermont. I mean, I followed my now partner, Kate, out there.
You're still with her?
Me and Kate are still together.
Awesome.
Yeah. I thought I'm going to find like a community college out there and just I wanted to just study plants. My idea at the time was I need to go back to school, get like more of a career type job. And I was interested in plants. So I thought I'll get a botany bachelor's and just get like some kind of lab job or like a field research job or something like that. So moving to Vermont, I thought I'll find some community college and I'll work on this farm. And so I moved to Vermont. Overgrown Path, I thought it was done. Actually, I recorded it.
Wait, hold on. We're in phase 2 now. Look, this is totally arbitrary, but I see you moving to Vermont and quote unquote giving up music as the beginning of phase 2, which is it's Chris Cohen time, 2011 to 2024. That's how I chop it up, is you moving to Vermont to follow Kate. That's when you come into your own. Hi, I'm Dave Gebroe. I threw my career as a licensed hearing instrument specialist in the trash, sold my house, and moved to the East Coast with my wife and 4-year-old son in order to focus on making the ultimate podcast for music obsessives thrive. Now I need your help. Although Discograffiti is rated in the top 2% of all podcasts globally, the economics of this thing are tricky. Becoming a member of Discograffiti's Patreon gives you access to over 100 more exclusive episodes. And moving forward now every Sunday for only $5 a month as a private first class, you get our new weekly show by and for Discograffiti's Patreon family, the Discograffiti Soldiers of Sound podcast. As a lieutenant, you get an ad-free, substantially elongated director's cut of every episode. And you'll be getting the shows a few days earlier than the general populace, which is designed to make you feel even more special than you already are. So when you become a major, you'll be getting access to the ultimate director's cuts of all our sprawling, super deep dive episodes. As far as I'm concerned, these super cuts have absolutely everything that was meant to be heard. Plus, you get yours before the lieutenants get theirs. But that ain't it. You also get all our other series, like Discograffiti's Top 10, our Buried Treasure Show, Rock Cousteau, our Slag Off Show, Queasy Listening, and exclusive limited series like The Private Press with Paul Major. And if you've got no financial worries to speak of, keep in mind that some of the higher Patreon tiers allow you to actually advertise on the show, choose the bands we cover, or even some of the guests we get. For the price of a cup of coffee a week, you can ensure my family's fed, build a music library that'll be the envy of your block, and connect to a thriving community of music maniacs all at the same time. Don't risk feeling badly about yourself by not giving. Patreon.com/Discograffiti. Once again, that's Patreon.com/Discograffiti. It's Chris Cohen time, 2011 to 2024. That's how I chop it up, is you moving to Vermont to follow Kate. That's when you come into your own. You worked at Clearbrook Farm, right?
Oh, yeah.
What'd you do on the farm?
I weeded, picked, processed, working outdoors with a bunch of high school kids. You
lived out there for 2 years. Kate taught at Bennington College, right?
Yeah.
And you're recording tracks that would become Overgrown Path, but at the time, you've relegated music, which is probably why it's so fucking good, to a hobby or something akin to a hobby.
I would never have said that I gave up music. I was still had very high ambitions about making this thing, but I just didn't see it as part of like a career trajectory. And I think that's going to be the theme of this whole interview, is just like each of these things, I'm just like, I didn't think of them as like a career trajectory. It was just following my muse or whatever. The Overgrown Path songs, I had started recording in LA. So I was writing those songs and recording them in my apartment in South Pasadena in 2010 and 11. And I actually had a version of it that was like, I thought I was done. I drove out to Vermont with my friend Yossi, and we were doing some shows together in our improv group that's called Park Details Band. We were playing shows and just driving out to Vermont for me to move out there. I remember playing him my record and him just being like, it's not done. Or like, he was like, it's not good. I'll tell you why. Yossi's a very honest person, and he gave me some really difficult to hear, but really, really valuable feedback. So I redid a lot of the stuff in Vermont that I had recorded in LA, but all those songs were essentially done in LA.
Same songs, different feel?
There's a different version of Cohen 99 that almost sounds like Santana. The rhythms in some of that stuff I kind of took from salsa music.
In 2020, you commented that you were working in a way that was probably not great for your mental health, that it took a lot out of you. Do you mean like the tinkering? What exactly would you not revisit in terms of the process?
Well, I think what I was saying about the unhealthy recording process probably applies to like all of those records, probably except for the new one. A lot of the year, like in the winter, in Vermont, you're not doing too much outside. That was when I did a lot of my work on the record, just hold up alone. And I had pretty bad habits in terms of working for like 12, 13 hours at a stretch. I didn't have many friends. I had friends that I met at the farm, and there were some Bennington friends of Kate's, but I didn't really have people that were doing the same kind of thing as me in terms of like doing art. I had never left California before. I mean, I was like at the farm, they used to call me Hollywood. I was like really a fish out of water in terms of like, I'd never lived through a winter like that before.
People don't realize how cold it gets.
It was not viable financially, and also just physically for my back. I threw my back out. So it felt like I couldn't stay there and keep doing that. I just knew I wouldn't be able to find people to go on tour.
It was cool that Greg from Deerhoof came out to Vermont to master it.
I mean, Greg did that for free, and he did a beautiful job. It was really, really, it was super nice of him.
Let's go track by track through this thing. I think it's a very, very special record. Monad, you were thinking of the first couple Soft Machine records, you say. I want to call out a lyric that I love. My atoms undetected disappear into the fizz of the unknown. Great fucking lyric.
Oh, thank you.
And, it's like really hitting me square in the face, right out of the gate, your voice. No matter what kind of maelstrom is or isn't raging behind you, the palliative groove of your voice is just so incredibly soothing. I love Monad. Musically, definitely, it feels like a statement of intent. There's a clarity to it. I'm really glad that Mike convinced you to put it under your own name, because it feels like there's good reason behind, not making this a Curtains record. Definitely feels like it's you coming out full force. Then, like I said, Solitude, there's something about the vibe of this that always just, no matter what I'm doing, I stop in my tracks.
I wrote that song. I remember writing it in Highland Park at Deb's Park. I was like sitting in this hillside, and like the light, like LA light when the sun's going down, it can be very, very depressing. I was so like profoundly depressed in that moment, sitting on this hillside and like the light. I was just like, I started singing that melody then. I remember recording it on my phone. And so that's the feeling I get when I think of that song. It's just loneliness, just kind of the horror of loneliness. It's just loneliness. I wanted to give people that feeling.
A quote that I pulled that you had said, it's about just me being depressing.
Exactly. Yeah.
But, like I said, it's always struck me as a very special song. And I know originally it was just a short intro to Caller Number 99. So I'm glad you extended it. Caller 99, we spoke about this one. I also really like that it's a pop song that's informed by salsa. It has ornamental elements where you can definitely ascertain that it's salsa influence, but it doesn't overtake it.
I mean, yeah, that's kind of what I aim for. I like to combine things in ways that are, never like right on the nose. I hopefully combine a few different things and just kind of make some new mutant kind of music.
Right. And then Roller Coaster Rider, I know it's a play on Mania, but you were researching roller coasters at this point in time, weren't you?
Actually, it was something that Greg Saunier said. I think he called me Roller Coaster Rider. I started writing the lyrics a little bit, and as I do when I'm writing lyrics, I like to just go down weird rabbit holes and research things. A lot of the lyrics for this record were written in Vermont. So I remember in Vermont, reading about roller coasters to come up with some of these things.
And you don't like the verses of this song. You just like the intro and the choruses, right? I feel like you're being leaning too hard on this one.
It's not one of my greatest moments, but I'm not like ashamed of them.
The next one, absolute masterpiece. I love Heartbeat.
Yeah, I mean, that's just kind of like the time I grew up in. I like the Carpenters, another group that my dad worked with. Actually, like that was music that I grew up around. I think I was channeling that era with this song.
This is a great one. This is definitely one of my favorites on the record. The next one was entirely recorded in Bennington. That's Inside a Seashell. It's got like a real dream state, sort of Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, Fantasia kind of a vibe to it. I mean, honestly, there's not a single song on this record that I don't think is great. You really came into your own on this, and it's like a complete departure, even from things in the past that had elements of the pop sensibility, and it's a massive move forward.
Well, thank you.
Don't Look Today, great song, an open theme, which is a total wrist slitter in the best possible way. Another one that was a lot of rewriting done after you went to Vermont, right?
You're talking about Open Theme?
Open Theme.
Yeah, the words were written in Vermont, and I credited my dad as playing the piano on that.
You wiped him off, re-recorded it, and still gave him credit.
I did. He didn't, I don't know, I guess it's petty of me even to say this now, but I'm just trying to be accurate. He didn't exactly nail it, so I replaced him.
You still gave him credit. That's not vengeful. All right, here's my little review for the record. It's amazing that you set aside 3 to 4 years to slave over a 30-minute record, but this is an absolute airtight little universe that, to me, signaled the birth, or maybe even more accurately, the rebirth of a true talent that had a space cleared out on the shelf for it, a space not taken up by any other artist. And all of us are lucky enough that you decided to dip into the same well for LP number 2. Thank God, because I don't think you'd yet exhausted the lethargic psychedelic torpor from which true magic had alchemized this diamond. An incredible debut, definitely 5 stars.
Thank you. That's my first 5-star review.
Ever, really?
Definitely.
I'm surprised. So in between this and the next record, you did a single with Natural Dreamers, which is a noise-based instrumental thing, Sergi and Just No Probs, and then a bunch of odd jobs. Yeah. So at this point, are you working as a gallery assistant?
That sounds about right, yeah, because we moved back to LA. I was working in restaurants and, at the gallery.
What was it like moving back? Do you miss Vermont?
There's things I miss about it, but no. I mean, moving back was like kind of a relief.
2016, As If Apart. Again, coming out on Captured Tracks. I know you and I spoke before this interview about, I see these 2 records as almost like one long record. You see the first 3 as companions, just from a listener's point of view. The first 2 are so companion-y for me that for a long time I had trouble telling them apart in a good way because I love the first one so much. This is a continuation of that aesthetic, recorded in Los Angeles from January 2014 to December 2015. 4 years is a bunch of time. Had anything changed for you as an artist?
I mean, it was so great to have a record deal, just to be like, okay, I have an assignment. I need to make another record. I was so happy, that I was given the green light to continue. I was able to get a practice space together that I turned into, like a recording studio practice space. And that was where I recorded the second record and the third record. So I was set up.
Those 2 records are recorded in the same place?
Yeah.
Wow, they sound different to me.
I was always upgrading my setup. And then the third one, also Kenny Gilmore helped me mix it. So it sounds better.
Love Kenny.
Yeah, me too.
Kenny reminds me of you in the way that you guys are weirdos in sheep's clothing. I mean, you both have like really skewed sensibilities, but you take a look at both you guys and you seem very normal on the just from the external features, which is great.
I don't think I could be any other way. I don't know if Kenny could either. Yeah, he was my housemate. He moved into when I was living with Nadell in LA. He was one of our housemates. He moved in when he was like 18. I think it was the first adult house he had lived in besides with his parents. I just, so much respect for him. He's a great musician, sweet person.
Yeah, very soft-spoken, gentle spirit, and super talented. Ariel was very lucky to have him.
He certainly was.
Let's talk about this record. I think some of your high points as a songwriter, certainly Yesterday's on my mind, which is the first song I ever heard by you, and definitely in my top 5, but starts off with Torrey Pine, which is just a classic. Just an amazing song, which you released as a single, but it was the demo, right?
Oh, right. There's that demo single. I think that came out like after the record. I don't really remember.
Yeah. That came out with a great cover. NRBQ's It's Not So Hard from the Scraps LP.
Thank you. Yeah, that's with Meg Duffy of Hand Habits.
Oh, okay. I give that single 4.5 stars. All right. So to get back to As If Apart.
All of these songs were just so hard. Tracking them, I just became much more exacting, just harder on myself. I just became very, very obsessive.
So an extension of that first record, basically.
Yeah, I mean, the thing you're describing, it's kind of like an ongoing battle of learning to be nicer to myself.
Yeah, I go through the same thing myself. One thing that you had said that is redolent of Torrey Pine for me is I'm writing songs that have fewer parts in them and trying to use key changes in a different way. In the past, I used key changes as if they were melodies. Now I use melodies as melodies. And to me, that smacks of Torrey Pine. Such a killer melody at its center, and that's what drives the song. And then As If Apart, the title track, the way that it charges out of the gate like a great steed, almost like the Chris Cohen version of Punk. I love how that starts. And of course, it departs from that feel almost immediately. That's a great song. Drink from a Silver Cup. My favorite aspect of that song is the way the vocal harmony splits off and ascends on the chorus.
Yeah, it was hard to figure that out. I remember really being unsure of which way to go with that. I really agonized over that one.
And is that a
That's
field
going to be my refrain here for everything.
I really agonized over that one. One of my absolute favorites on the record is In a Fable.
Thank you. I was trying, that was the one song I was like trying to do like a Neil Young kind of song. I don't know if that came through.
Not to me, but it doesn't detract from it. Look, I love what I call the sausage grinder. If you take any influence and shove it through the sausage grinder, your particular perspective is going to pervert it or fuck with it in such a way that hopefully it comes out indistinguishable from the source material.
I mean, I think it's very liberating. You can just throw anything in there. It all comes out interesting in a way if you do it right.
And then Needle and Thread started off as a one-chord song, right?
Yeah.
Before you put a bridge on it?
The chord changes do get kind of complicated. Yeah, I wanted to write something kind of like folky, and then kind of tried to do more stuff like that later on too, after this record.
The more depressing style material like Sun Has Gone Away or Solitude, is that in any way easier for you to write or more difficult?
I'm a really negative person. I can go down the dark passage easily. I think those songs are probably kind of easy for me to write.
It's kind of what I figured.
No more than one per record, hopefully.
Well, no, I mean, you do it so well, but I feel like it's a space that you must inhabit in order to do it as adeptly as you do. I mean, I've been on antidepressants for like 15 years. And, my two favorite songs ever are probably I Just Wasn't Made for These Times and Listen to the Lion by Van Morrison, which are two very depressing songs. So has depression been something that you struggle with?
I think I struggle with depression, but it's funny because it wasn't until I was going to a therapist, probably like after this record that we're talking about, that I was going to a therapist that was like, I think you have depression. And I remember being so distraught about this diagnosis because I was just like, I did not think of myself as a person with depression, and I didn't want to have to start taking medication. I mean, I don't take medication. I haven't, but
really, wow.
I'm sure I do struggle with depression like most people. I imagine most people do. I mean, how could you not?
How could you not? I agree.
But yeah, no, I mean, music is all part of that. Music is how I deal with all those things,
I hope you don't take this the wrong way, but one of the most surprising takeaways for me from this interview will be that you don't take antidepressants.
Oh, huh.
It must be tough to grapple with without any assistance medically.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't even know. I mean, yeah, I guess I just don't know what it's like. It's partly like I kind of love my depression too, in a way. I mean, like I just wasn't made for these times. It's like my favorite music is music that just rips your heart out, and like I just want to do that for people because I think it makes them happy. It's just so twisted. But I really do think that in a way, it's sort of like this incredible gift of feeling. It's got to do both. I mean, if depression ever gets to the point where it's like, where it's hampering your life, you got to do something about it. With music, I think depressing music kind of sustains me in a weird way. And I like depressing music. I like to feel really just like heavy and overwhelmed.
First time I was ever diagnosed as depressed, it was much farther back in my life. That was probably in my early to mid 20s. And it actually, of course, made me depressed that I was diagnosed as depressed. Yeah. I've tried to get myself out of the hole by digging my way down further and further into it musically. Yeah. So one of the worst, most ill-advised trawls I've ever gone through is submerging myself in Syd Barrett world in 1991, just endlessly listening to Syd Barrett when I was in a depression. And it can be dangerous. All right, here's my As If Apart review. It's always been difficult for me to distinguish this record from Overgrown Path in the best way, but on this trawl, here's my official prognosis. Overgrown strikes me as the more consistent listen, while As If Apart has the higher peaks. It's really splitting hairs, and ultimately, it's like trying to decide which of your twin sons is worthy of greater love. Again, a distinct sonic universe worthy of long stretches of inhabitation. I'll give this 4 3/4 stars.
Thank you. I'll take it.
So after making this one, you said, I just wanted to make another record by myself using Pro Tools and having this kind of long-term, no deadline type of schedule. So are you still a fan of this process, or retrospectively, can it go fuck itself?
It probably won't be super different, but it'll be a little bit different in the future.
All right, that about does it. If you enjoyed this episode, then Venmo Gebroe. Come on, Venmo Gebroe at David-Gebroe. Please keep in mind this is entirely how I support my wife and 5-year-old son, so don't risk feeling badly about yourself by not giving. Venmo me a tip at David-Gebroe. And stay tuned, because next week we've got part 2 of Chris Cohen, who bears his heart around the trauma surrounding his father's various indiscretions, all of which informed his self-titled 2019 LP. And of course, we also talk about his incredible brand new album, Paint a Room. Okay, here's the week up ahead. This Sunday, our weekly show within a show, the Discograffiti Soldiers of Sound podcast, drops for our Patreon's private tier. These are real people with talent and a burning fire deep inside, just like you and I. Then come Monday, the early release ad-free ultimate cut of the Chris Cohen episode rolls out for our major tier. It's the show as it was truly intended to be heard, with all the essentials left intact. And then on Wednesday, the lieutenant cut of the Chris Cohen episode's released. And then come Friday, all the rest of you penny pinchers get to join in on the action. A heartfelt Discograffiti thanks goes out to my beautiful wife and son, Jen and Mason, Chris Cohen, Rudy Fishman, Becky Boyd, my incredibly loyal fans, and especially the entire Patreon community, the Soldiers of Sound. I love every last one of you, and this show would not exist without you, my friends. Speaking of friends, it's high time for some new ones. They're in our Facebook group, Discograffiti Soldiers of Sound. That's the best way to find out what's coming up on the show, but there's a hell of a lot more. You get recaps of the day in music history, the ability to pitch questions to guests, polls that put you in the driver's seat on guest and band decisions, and access to a thriving creative hub if you're looking for a collaborator. So make sure you don't miss out. You can find the link to the Discograffiti Soldiers of Sound Facebook page right there in the show notes. And if you don't mess with the Zuck, no sweat. Just email me at info@discograffiti.com and I'll keep you in the loop. So now that it's done and you want more, another way to dive even deeper into the wonderful world of indie pop is to leap headfirst into my interview with Kula Shaker about the albums that shaped them. That's episode 139. The 4-part Mark Robinson series, that's episodes 128, 130, 135, and 136. The 3-part Will Cullen Hart Olivia Tremor Control series, that's episodes 131, 132, and 133. Vashti Bunyan rating her entire catalog, that's episodes 103 and 104. An interview with Foxygen's Jonathan Rado, that's episode 75. Rado rates Rundgren, that's episodes 37 and 40. Unquestionably the greatest Lou Barlow interview of all time, which is episode 62. Lou rates the Zombies, episodes 59 and 60. Anthony Fantano rates the Velvet Underground, that's episodes 32 and 33. Pitchfork contributor Jen Pelly rates the Raincoats, episode 15, and Cocteau Twins, episode 3. And of course, be sure to mark your calendars, because next Friday, August 9th, we're coming at you with Chris Cohen Part 2. Trust me, you're not going to want to miss it. And so, from now till then, don't let our youth go to waste, lads and ladies. It's Discograffiti!